Right, so this is the first video with regard to mounting the rear suspension. The first thing we're doing here is mounting this rear cross brace. And, this is just a structural part of the chassis. You basically have these beefy heim joints and, they screw into the cross brace. I mean, this isn't the final installation. I may wind up changing the color of the back of this. I sort of like the all aluminum look, and a friend of mine who's building a Superlite did his in like metallic gray, and I thought it looked great. But anyway, we've got to put it together. You wind up putting things together and taking them apart once or twice during a build. I guess a couple comments here. This cross brace, you've got the rear shock mount attaches with these 1/2-inch bolts. And, there's a lot of adjustability with these heim joints. So, you have to figure out the proper distance. But once you turn these heim joints in and you try to, make it equal on both sides, these bolts basically slide right into the chassis. So it's not technically a stressed member, but, once you tighten it up, it'll be rock solid. Okay, so first step. Okay, these are the lower A-arms. You can see I used the heavy-duty 5/8-inch heim joints, a jam nut, also a washer between the jam nut and the A-arm, and also some anti-seize as well. The anti-seize goes inside or on the threads, but there's no anti-seize between the jam nut and the top of the washer, so it'll lock it in nice and tight. Looking good. Okay, here are the top rear A-arms. I did the same thing that I did with the bottom rear A-arms. Here, we have another heim joint that holds the top of the rear upright. But, this was sort of fun putting it all together. I mean, these parts are just so nice. They really go together very well. Very cool. Okay, these are the front upper and lower A-arms. Let's see, a couple things. I showed you the rear A-arms. These are the front. What I did was I also put washers in between the jam nuts and the aluminum A-arm. These are thinner. I think I like the look of these better, and it's like half the thickness, so I think this will work out better. I put these washers in the rear as well, so when I mount that, you'll see the washers change thickness. But basically, the tops get mounted with 1/2-inch bolts, and then the upright is a 5/8-inch bolt, and the lower arms, both front and rear, are 5/8-inch bolts as well. And then you have space for the ball joint and the shock pickup. Okay, so we'll segue over to the next to do. Okay, here's a little work in process. I'm in the throes here of mounting these brackets for the upper A-arms, and then there's a matching set for the lower A-arms. Let's see, a couple comments here. I mean, you can see the welds are fairly close to where these brackets have to be in all the locations. In some of the locations, the welds sort of interfered with the U-shape of these brackets, so I literally needed to use a Dremel and just sort of carve it out a little bit to get these plates, and also the backing plates. There's some backing plates here that secure these suspension mounting points to the frame. But basically, you just got to take your time and grind it out a little bit at a time, and they came out fine. Because I have this crate shipped frame, none of this fitting was done ahead of time. If you received a roller from RCR, this would all been taken care of at the factory. All right, so here are the standard parts for each of the suspension pickup points, and this is a suspension pickup bracket or shock mount bracket, and each one of these is installed with a backing plate, so they sandwich the aluminum, and they're very strong and they don't flex. What I'll do is I'll add a little anti-seize to the back of this and the back of this, so when it connects to the aluminum, there's no chemical reaction between the metals. So if I have to remove these at some point, they'll come apart. And then you just use a very thin washer and a lock nut and torque to spec. Okay, so that's how these are all put on the chassis. Okay, well, I've hand tightened all the suspension mounts at this point, well, except for this bottom one here. The next step really is to torque them all and start to hang the suspension. I had a little bit of a modification for this particular one. You could see there's a well bead here, so I had to sort of grind that down and make this lay flat, which I've been doing in a couple of the spots on the rear suspension. The other challenge is that there wasn't enough room for the backing plate, because there's a weld bead that mirrors this weld bead on the inside of the chassis, and it's fairly thick. And I just decided not to grind that out and just trim the bracket down a little bit, and I was able to fit a washer on top of it to hold it tight. So I may decide to trim that down and put a new backing plate on. But anyway, we'll take a look at sort of what I'm talking about. There's a lot of glare there, but there you go. I'll zoom in a little bit. So you can see I trimmed that bracket, and then I used the washer to hold on to clamp the bracket against the inside wall. And I think this is a good solution. The washer didn't have to be modified. It sort of just bends to the contour of the weld. And you can see I put a little bit of the anti-seize just so there's no reaction between the aluminum and the steel. So I think this is good. I'm going to torque it all up and start to hang the suspension. Okay, well, I'm done torquing all the suspension mounting points that have these particular brackets. You can see I marked them all with pink nail polish. I'm not really good with this nail polish. Looks pretty sloppy. Maybe I'll redo it. I did run into an issue though. I am new at this, and I went on the internet and I found 3/8 inch grade 8 bolts, and I found a torque chart, and the torque chart said to torque these bolts to 39 foot-pounds. Well, I'm cranking and I feel the thing compress, and it didn't seem right, but I kept cranking, and sure enough, after I cranked actually this one down, and then when I was working on the middle one, I literally snapped the bolt. So clearly I was applying way too much pressure. Even the backing plate got indented. So I went to a more reputable source. I went to fastenal.com, and sure enough, this needs about 30 foot-pounds. So I reset my torque wrench and torqued everything to 30 foot-pounds. And it felt right. It just felt good that it was on there solid, got good compression, and then the tool clicked. So anyway, these are the upper A-arm mounting points. So this is the A-arm, and then this is the upper shock mounting point. And let's segue over to the rear, and you'll see all the pickup points there. Okay, well, this is the final segue of the video. Let's see, a couple things to point out. So these are the rear suspension pickup points, and you have the upper ones and the lower ones, and you can see that I've torqued and marked them. This pickup point is actually for a rod that controls the toe in on the rear wheels. And then if we take a peek back here, you can see there's a mount on the cross brace up here and down there, and that's for a set of 3 bars that will attach on each side of the Graziano to hold it in place, when the car is accelerating. So it's pretty neat setup. And the last comment I'll make is you can see the lock nuts here. So the kit comes with the nylon lock nuts. The nylon lock nuts are really not the best when they're close to a heat source, and really this is the area where I'm going to have the exhaust, and I'm putting catalytic converters in this car to make it totally emissions and street legal, and it's going to be pretty toasty in the back here. So I went with these deformed steel grade 8 lock nuts with the little blue Loctite and torque them to spec. And I think that's a better approach than the nylon lock nuts, at least back here. In the front, I use the ones that came with the kit, the nylon ones. Okay, so thanks for watching, and let's see what's up next. I think we're going to start hanging the suspension on the car. So this is certainly a lot of fun because you spend a few hours in the garage and you start to you see the progress very easily, where look, the last 9 months I spent really just making parts for that LT4, the power steering, the power brakes, to do all the custom work, so that this is a little easier. It's fun, it's all fun, but it's nice to see the progress come a little quicker. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.